Welcome to Richer Soul, Jason Silver. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks a ton for having me, Rocky. It's great to be here.
And I am excited for the conversation. As always, we start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your school and family teach you about money?
School, I feel like not much at all. The first time I feel like I learned anything really about money from school was taking an economics course that they forced me to take when I was doing my engineering degree in university. Family, that was a thing that was kind of instilled in me young. My parents, I'm lucky, fortunate to be able to get an allowance when I was a kid, and my parents were constantly working with me on, okay, there's this thing you want to get. How much do you have to save? What does that look like? What happens when you spend your money? How do you think about saving your money? I think that was kind of instilled in me from a young age. Not tons in school though.
So they were actually quite intentional.
I think so. My dad opened a bank account for me. I got a call from the bank the other day saying, "Hey, did you know that you've been with the bank for I don't know how many decades?" And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I think you should treat me better given I've been here for so long." But I still remember he took me to open up a bank account, and there wasn't much in it, but the idea of this is a dollar, this is what you do with it. You don't want to spend all your money all at once. It's not a good policy. Was something we did from an early age, and it's something that my wife and I do with our kids now.
Do you know what prompted him to do that? Was there something in his background that
It's a funny question. I've never thought about that until this moment, and probably I'm going to get off the podcast. And when I talk to my dad later today, I'll ask him, why it was something. My mom and my dad were both kind of into this kind of thing, so I'm not really sure. I mean, both my parents had accounting in their backgrounds, and maybe it came to them through their parents, and that's why they kind of pushed it on us. But I never thought to ask that question.
it's generational, and it's interesting to see how it is. And honestly, the fact that your parents taught you, you're actually a very small minority.
I
Probably
consider myself lucky then.
less than 10% of parents. I was just on our episodes.
Hmm.
I would guess almost less than 10% of parents.
Wow.
What's actually interesting is there's a greater percentage of people who grew up poor, and the fact that they grew up poor gave them the incentive or the push to move forward to learn more about
Hmm.
money. And so there's this balance between given too much and not having enough,
Hmm.
and it's a very fine line between the two.
I'll make sure to give my parents an extra hug and a high five next time I see them, for sure.
I'm surprised that the engineering school actually made you take an economics course, because more often than not, they don't, which is why most engineers go for an MBA, because they don't understand the business side.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say it taught me business, but they teach what's compounding interest. How does that work? Why is this important? How do you calculate the various? And I just remember it was reams and reams of numbers. I don't know if it was forced on me that I had to take specifically economics, but you do have to take non-engineering disciplines, and maybe I picked it. I can't remember, but I don't remember loving the course, to be totally honest with you.
And in spite of that, you've actually been in a lot of very entrepreneurial companies, right? You were early at Airbnb and experience with AI. Just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial side again is something that I think was just kind of in me. I was always very interested in, if everybody's looking left, I'm going right. And that's burned me sometimes for sure, but it also has created some incredible opportunities. And I got a job. I did an engineering degree. I did a master's in engineering and biomedical engineering. Thought I would do that. Got a job in that, and got interested in startups. And so I left what I was doing. Did some work for free for a startup to say, hey, you mentioned an MBA. I had done a lot of university. I didn't want to go and do an MBA, but I wanted to be in business. And so I found a startup and said, let me do some of this business stuff. Nothing on my resume says I can do it, but let's see what happens. I got really lucky. The CEO, one of the VPs, kind of took me under their wing, and it was like, sit here, don't talk, but you can take notes. And I got experience, how do you raise money? How do you handle investors? How do you figure out commercialization deals? And hooked at that moment. And founded a couple of my own businesses, wound up at Airbnb, got to see what the conventional slash unconventional, like crazy up and to the right growth looks like. Was in early at AI, before it was the coolest, hottest thing that everybody was working on, which was interesting. And now I'm here talking to you.
It's an incredible journey through that all. Just out of curiosity, do you know where did it come from for you to look left when everyone else is looking right? Like, was that just natural, ingrained, or was that?
It's another good question, man. You and my therapist need to have a chat. It's, I maybe it was growing up, like as I mentioned, I was fortunate to be able to get an allowance, but my family wasn't, I didn't grow up with abundance. And I would often see like, oh, the kid at school has like the nicest pair of shoes that are super expensive. And that was never a thing my parents either could or chose to buy for me. And so I had to figure out like, well, how do I make the like other option over here cool for myself? And it just kind of always, if other people are doing it, I almost have a reaction of just like, yeah, that's not going to be for me. And sometimes that makes things way harder. Going with the flow sometimes is, there's a reason why people are going in that direction. It's just the path of least resistance. It's a good way to go. Other times it's led to some incredible opportunities where, okay, I have an engineering degree. I'm going into business. Like, why don't you just go do the engineering thing? It's a great career path. It's actually led to something that's a much better fit for what I love doing. So I'm not sure where it comes from is the short answer, but it's there. I feel it. It's like ingrained in my values.
I challenge whether or not following the herd is a good path.
What I'm saying is there are times when, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's a
Hmm.
reason why, you do a thing this way because it's the best, easiest way to do it. There are times when that is true. I think being a lemming and just having your eyes closed and left foot, right foot behind the person in front of you without ever questioning it, I'm certainly not advocating for that. I think sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit more on the other side of I reject it purely because it's popular. I've learned to just take a second and say, there might be a reason why it's popular, and maybe it's the right thing. Just because it's popular doesn't mean I shouldn't go and do it. So I've had to kind of curtail it a bit, but it's there right away. Everyone's doing it. Why would I do it? Like, you're looking left, I'm looking right immediately. Is there another way? How can I go a different direction?
No, and that I think that's where change comes from. I think that's where business succeeds a lot of times. That's where something new comes about. I mean, you take Airbnb, it's looking left when everyone else was looking right. I mean, here you've got an entire company that rents out rooms and doesn't own a single one of them,
Yeah,
right? And has no plans to either. And it's amazing that you can build that. And I mean, Uber's no different. It's funny that they all came out around the same time, like this whole concept of doing things slightly differently that way.
I don't know why that happened, but they did kind of take off at the same time. We were always in conversations of like, how does Uber do this? How does Airbnb do that? And I knew folks over there, and it was great to learn from them as we were trying to figure our stuff out too.
And sometimes it's the right time for an opportunity, meaning that was the time that the internet was really starting to grow, different platforms, the iPhone apps. You couldn't have done it 10 years earlier. There would have been no way to market it, right?
Yeah.
And 10 years later, well, somebody else probably did it. So,
Listen, I think the company got a lot of things right, obviously, but one of the things that kind of stood out for me was, okay, what are we really great at? And let's go be really great at that. And you mentioned owning property, and that conversation came up all the time. It was constantly a push to like, well, we should just expand and like buy some properties and rent those out. And what are we really great at? Like, really, really great at. And let's do a great job at that. And we're going to connect people with space to people who want the space and make that process as seamless as possible so you feel like you belong there. Right? The idea of home sharing wasn't invented by Airbnb. It's been going on for as long as there have been homes. They just kind of changed the script on here's a better way to do it. Here's an easier way to do it. Here's a way that, to your point, a bunch of technological markers kind of lined up and enabled a new, easier way to accomplish the thing that had been going on for ages.
and it's dramatically changed real estate and the way people do things, and it's created a whole industry of people buying and making Airbnbs. I think the biggest issue there is a lot of those people aren't business owners and they didn't realize what it actually means to run a hotel, so to speak. And so
No
there's
such thing
that.
as a free lunch.
There's no such thing as a free lunch,
It's
and
work.
how to create that balance. But then also, if you take McDonald's, before McDonald's puts a McDonald's in, they do a traffic study and they understand what the demographics of an area are. I think what happens with Airbnb is everybody starts to see it's successful over there. And then it's not like McDonald's where we put one here and we're not putting one for another 5 miles. It's almost like they put five McDonald's next to each other and they wonder why none of them are doing well. Or you have to learn to differentiate yourself and your McDonald's versus Bob's Burger Barn, and you can do that. But it's interesting to watch and see, and because I'm a numbers guy, I always look behind it. What are the numbers? What makes it work? What doesn't make it work? And then the time involved, because that's the part I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah, listen, I love working for the company, and I love watching how the company's doing from the sidelines now too. It's great, interesting to see how it's continuing to play out for sure.
There's a time to be and a time to leave. And hey, that works. So, it sounds like you had this idyllic childhood. You get hooked up with all these great startups. You're cranking it out. But life tends to throw us some curveballs, and I know you had one in your life. Would you like to talk about your sister and kind of what happened?
Yeah, everything, you kind of look back and you can paint this story, and I'd like to tell you there was this perfect plan going through, and it wasn't there. In between some of the stuff we talked about in Airbnb, like I raised money and crashed a startup, which is a very challenging thing, and I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to me. And then I was building this AI company called Integrate AI, and I got a call one day. My parents were on vacation. I got a call. It was my sister, and she was in the emergency room. She'd gone in for a regular checkup. Her doctor said, I think you got to go to the hospital and see what's going on here. I got a call from her, relatively panicked, like I don't know what to do. Mom and dad aren't here. I'm not really sure what's going on. She didn't want me to come. She was like, I'm fine. But I was like, I'm coming to the hospital. I had a young kid at the time. My wife took the kid, and I go in to see her at the hospital. It was pretty clear pretty fast that it was pretty bad. We didn't know exactly what was going on. It was hard trying to get the information, but when the hospital gives you as many tests as quickly as they gave Rachel tests, it was clear that she was the center of attention in a way that you never want to be the center of attention. It became clear that she had a very late stage, very aggressive form of cancer. I had to call my parents and tell them what I knew, which wasn't much, but it was the hardest phone call I've ever made in my life. And 9 months later, she lost her battle with cancer, and I lost my only sister.
Yeah, having dealt with a lot of loss in my life, I get it. It's never easy, never expected, and it can be life altering in a sense.
It's been 5 years, and still, I tell the story a certain way, and it's tough. I think in a lot of ways you don't get over it, and at the same time, I'm very fortunate, and I dealt with a lot of guilt on this topic because she passed away and it changed my life. The way I'm living now is better than how I was living before. And I dealt with a lot of guilt around, like, how can it be that losing my sister became a positive catalyst in my life? And that was hard to deal with. And now I try to talk about it more because it's what happened. And what I learned is we kind of all know about post-traumatic stress. It's in the media a lot. It has a flip side, which isn't talked about a lot, and that's post-traumatic growth. And there's a small subset of people who experience trauma, and it actually leads to an incredible amount of growth in their lives. And it's not everyone. And I'm very fortunate that I wound up in that bucket. And it has changed me, like as a human. And I think to not talk about it is to devalue, what happened. And obviously I would trade all of it to bring her back if I could, and I can't. So the best thing I can do is to talk about it and to like squeeze every last drop of juice that I possibly can out of the lemon that, wound up getting handed to us.
It's funny. The two things everyone is afraid of is public speaking and death. And you don't have to publicly speak, but we are all going to die. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. And I don't know why societally, again, this is a time to look left instead of right, just refuses to kind of accept it or to face it. And I think part of that is we put off till tomorrow
Yeah.
what we should do today. We take time for granted. And especially if you look at people in retirement, it's like, oh, I'll do that when. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. Um,
I got a very deep seated lesson earlier in my life than most people get it, which is that like it's a stupid platitude, but like tomorrow's not guaranteed, and you can make all the plans you want in the world, but I see some of my friends now. It's challenging that at the age where parents are starting to pass away, and it's really hard. I lost my sister at a time when it's uncommon. It's not that
mhm.
it doesn't happen, but it's it's uncommon that happens at that age, and it gave me a very real relationship with. Well, I can make all the plans that I want, and you want to do some planning, but I don't know that I'm going to get there. And one of the big learnings for me coming out of it is I was hugely overinvested in the future.
Mm.
The equation I had in my head is I always told you that my family came first. I would always tell you that. If you were around the clock 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have said family first. But the way I internalized that was different. What I meant was I'm hustling now like crazy because that's going to create some financial opportunity in the future. And when that happens, I'm doing it for my family and we're all going to enjoy it together. Right. And that's how I would have told you I'm family first right now. And, if I get a phone call and I'm in a meeting and it's a doctor about one of my kids, I'm going to step out of that meeting and take the phone call. Okay. But that is a hugely future focused approach where it requires me to accomplish something in the future in order to have the things that I want. And what I learned is like, okay, I don't want to wind up in a situation where like, oh, I could die tomorrow. Therefore, like, forget saving. Like, I'm just going to do whatever I want right now and not care about the future at all and blow all the money on all the fun things. Like, that's not a good solution either. Something in between is what we want. And what I find as I work with folks on this, most people who care a lot about achieving in their careers are very over indexed, as I was, on the future. So I'm not saying don't plan for the future anymore, don't prioritize the future, but you got to pull that slider bar a little bit further back, and a little bit more energy and attention on in the moment is incredibly, incredibly transformative.
And I find most people tend to be black and white, live in the future, or, I'm just going to live in this moment and who cares about the future. But yet, between A and Z are a whole lot of letters, and M is in the middle. And there are shades of that slider. And honestly, for me, what I've learned is there are times to sprint and there are times to coast. And so, sometimes if you're starting up a business or you're writing your book, hey, for the next 3 or 6 months, I'm going to kind of be checked out a little bit. But then for the next 3 or 6 months, I'm going to be 100% checked in and I'm going to check out of the other side. And so it's like that. And I think, your kids appreciate that because there's times where they're sick of you too, right? Dad's too much. Or so it's that nice little bit of harmony back and forth that really, I think, is what keeps life more interesting.
Yeah, it's not a simple answer. We want a simple solution. That's why work-life balance, it's this or it's that. It's never that simple, and I think that's,
Oh,
it what I kind of struggled with as I was trying to figure out is, you hear these platitudes, be in the moment. Great. That sounds great. I understand the benefits of it. Be present, be in the moment. What do I like? What do I do with that? I'm not a monk. I have other things going on in my life. I can't sit in the cave and pontificate on that idea, for hours at a time. nor do I think what I want to, though I respect folks who are interested in doing that. How to take that and like apply it to my everyday life was a challenge. And it was a challenge that I was just like, I want to figure this particular nut out because I see that there are benefits here. I just don't know how to apply live in the moment, be present. Like they sound nice on paper, but what do I do?
So we don't like the word balance because it means equal,
Yeah.
and life is never going to be balanced, but life can be harmonious, which means at different points, different parts of the song are going to play, but they're all still going on, right? And you've got to learn to make music that you're happy with. And you might not like the music I like, and that's okay too. Figure it out for you and what's important, and then create the song to play. And I think I'm wondering if this is kind of what inspired you to write the book. It's your grass is greener. Use what you have to get what you want at work and in life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to tell you that the idea of writing the book was this like moment of like, oh, I'm going to write a book on X. What wound up happening is, my sister passed away, and it flipped everything on its head for me. Like the core idea that like the people in my life were going to be around, that this could happen, just got flipped on its head, and I was like cratering. I was building a startup. We had raised money. There were lots of employees. Trying to get that off the ground is hard. I had a young kid who rolled into the pandemic. I was dealing with a bunch of grief, like falling apart, right? And I kind of hit this moment where it's like, well, what I'm doing isn't working, so I got to do something differently, and I just started challenging every assumption I had, and I went like full Tim Ferriss in my life. What can I like tweak, tinker with? I tried to change everything, change this diet, try this personal wellness experiment, try this health hack, like which one's going to make me feel better? How's it going to go? Try these things, those things. Some worked, lots didn't. And as I kind of walked my way through that, I realized I've never really tried this at work. I have a bunch of like in-ground assumptions about the way I'm supposed to work. And the biggest one was like deferred or delayed gratification, like hustle now, get things done now, it'll be great later. Right? Work is something that can be fun from time to time, but primarily is something to just like push your way through the hard problems. I realized like I lost the joy of doing it. And so I brought the experimentation to work, and I just kind of like, why do we set all these goals? Do I need these goals? Why do I this? Why do I that? What if I work these hours, those hours, this many days, that many days? The more I did this, the more I started to find things that like my assumptions about work are wrong. There are some tactics I can deploy that like make my job better. When my job's better, I do better at it. When I'm doing better at my job, I feel better. When I feel better, I do better at it. When those things are happening, my life gets better. And everything just kind of started to transform, and people started to pay attention on my team to what I was doing. I'm so lucky that I had a very understanding team. I was coming in every week with a different experiment and tracking it, and like they probably thought I was crazy. But as some things started to like bubble up, they would ask me, and then I would help them. Here's what I learned. Like, why don't you try this? It would help them. And then I realized, ooh, this seems like it's working. And I decided to leave a company that I had built and loved to go focus all my energy on how do I help people like work better, meaning do better work, feel better about it, and have it impact your life in a much more positive way. And as I did that, tactics started coming out. People I was working with said, where are you getting this from? They have bookcases like yours, and they're like, I can't read. Where is this? I haven't seen it in a book, and you should write it down. No, I'm not an author. I pushed back for a while, and then I thought, let's try. I wrote a chapter. That turned into 2, 3. I wound up reaching out to a bunch of editors from books that I respected. One of the editors on Atomic Habits, was interested in the project. He jumped on. That changed the trajectory of the book. And now I stand here being like, I wrote a book. It feels insane, but that's kind of how we wound up here.
It is a wild journey. You don't always know. I will tell you, I love Tim Ferriss's experiments, but he's nuts.
I've never met him, so I have no comment.
I've never met him, but when you listen to enough of his story, and you listen between the lines, you start to realize that. And he even he admits these things. So it's not like I'm making up something. It's when you listen to those slight comments that come up, you really get the truth of what's going on.
Hmm.
Um, which is also true about people and money and people and work. Like, if you listen to someone talk about their work, it's the little offhand comment that's said ever so softly on the side that
The
you
story
start.
between the story. Yeah.
It's the story between the story. Now, I know in your book you talked about enjoying work, which to me sounded crazy when you work for someone else.
Hmm.
Um, and part of that is, I think it really depends on the culture of where you work. And I know there are some companies with great culture. I just find most of them, especially larger ones, aren't. Um,
So this is the primary challenge that I think a lot of people face, is that people feel like they have no agency, right? And
yes.
the traditional way that we think about enjoying work, or working well, or whatever it might be, is it's very what focused, meaning I have to go and get something. I have to get this promotion, this new project. I have to go and land this dream job. It's like the story that we're fed, that like if you enjoy your job, you'll never work a day in your life. Like, super. Everybody wants that. Like, what the hell does that mean? I don't know what to do with that. Right. And we're so focused on external things. And the challenge there, that I think we all kind of know, but it's easy to forget it, is that an outcome is kind of out of your control. Right. You might set some goal or something that you want, like you want to get that new promotion. You can do incredible work, best work of your career, and not get promoted. And it could be because, like you said, the culture is not good. It could be your manager is not good. It could be everything about the company is amazing, but the position to promote you in just doesn't exist. So you can't, there's nowhere for you to, there's no hole for you to go and fill. Yet you did incredible work and you're disappointed. And so the question was like, how do you flip that on its head? Right. And the agency that I think folks do have is, you don't have to change your work to enjoy it more. You just have to change how you work to enjoy it more. You can have all the same tasks, all the same objectives, but in the way that you accomplish it, you do have a lot of agency to change that. And those are the things that can lead to more moment to moment, be present, enjoyment and fulfillment into the job that you already have, the job that you already do.
I'd love for you to give an example of that. But before you do, one of the things we do with our clients is we'll ask them to create the list of the loves and drains.
Right.
What do you love doing? What drains you? Get rid of everything that drains you, because there's somebody out there who happens to love that. You just got to find it and hand it to them. But can you give us a concrete example of what you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, a concrete example is why I'm talking to you right now. I have to launch a book. I've never done that before. You do a bunch of research into, how do I launch a book? Okay. You got to get like this many media impressions, and you got to like pump it in this way and that way. How could I accomplish that? Right? Because the goal is to have a good book launch. Well, you mentioned like loves and drains. Okay. I really love meeting new people and talking to folks and having conversations about things. I really like that. I like having to try to take my ideas and make them snappy so they fit in a conversation. I get drained by tweaking and tinkering with like operational numbers to make it 5% better, 10% better, 2% better, whatever it might be. So I need to do some form of online advertising, but I don't need to do it. I choose that that's not going to be a thing I'm going to do, versus, you know what, a great way for me to pump the book and get to meet people, which I enjoy anyway, is to go on podcasts. Right? Is to find folks like you to have conversations with about me, my book. I get to learn about you. I get to meet you. I get to make a new connection. And so I'm moving towards the same goal, but I'm making a conscious choice about the way in which I'm trying to get there.
That's the reason I have a podcast. People said you have to create content, like write all these blog posts. And for 3 years, nothing got done. I even tried to pay people to get it done, and it didn't work out well, and they wouldn't do what I wanted, and they never delivered on time.
Mm-hmm.
I started the podcast, and here we are every week,
Yeah,
content, week after week after week,
it's
for
great.
400 plus weeks.
My book
And
exists for the same reason. Like
yeah,
I started by making a course because I said I'm not a writer. And so I made a course. Like, I'm used to public speaking. I thought, I'm going to make a course and I'm going to record it, and people can, take the course on their own. I built the whole thing, put in a whole bunch of work, structured the yada, 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 yada. And I got to the last step. And the last step was record myself giving each of the presentations for each of the lectures that already existed, that I had already delivered before in person. All I had to do was record myself. I put that off and off and off and off because I don't enjoy presenting to nobody. I like to talk to other people. And what I realized was I'm not going to enjoy this course. It's going to turn into, yes, I'll record this. I'll put it up on the internet. I'm going to have to do advertising towards it and tweaking and tinkering, like the stuff I told you I don't love. Instead, I thought, well, let's try to do it as a book and see where it goes. And when I wrote one chapter, I was like, I genuinely enjoy what is for me significant challenge of taking a concept, making it interesting for someone and making it highly actionable for them. And I enjoyed the process. And what I'm most proud about the book, it hasn't launched yet. We'll see how it does. But what I'm most proud about is it's the first thing I've done in my career purely for the creation of it, like the creative endeavor. Usually I have to accomplish this, I have to accomplish that. This was purely for the creative endeavor of like, I enjoyed the process of writing this book, and I hope people will, as a result, enjoy the process of reading it.
Did you ever create the course, or did you not record?
You mean, does the course exist?
Yeah.
It exists on a course like backend server somewhere, but I never hit record. It never went out into the wild. I deliver bits and pieces of it when a client will ask me to come in and speak on a topic, but it does not exist.
So there's a way to create courses that actually will fit with you. Find 20 beta clients and have them show up and record you teaching them and the back and forth. And then there's your course.
Yeah. I've kind of started doing, I specifically focus now on decision making, which I really love. A lot of companies struggle with how to make better decisions, faster decisions. And so that's been a big draw for me. I have workshops now there, and I like workshops better than courses. Workshops are much more interactive. They're much more applicable to what's going on in the day-to-day of your business versus, hey, everybody come and like, I'm going to point a bunch and make a lecture on a thing. So
no.
For me, the workshop's going great. But if I ever do want to write a course, or launch the course, I'll give you a shout and you can help me figure out how to make it happen for real.
Record your workshops.
It's a good idea.
And turn them into the course. And somebody will take your clips of when you're speaking, and then they'll do all the Q&A, which honestly, that's the most valuable parts of the course, or the Q&A.
Yeah, exactly.
And then here's the Q&A. Yeah, they just cut it up and they make it work, and somebody will know how to do that and love it, and they'll be good. Let's dig into some of the meat. One of the things you talk about in the book is miscommunication and the costs associated with it. And I'll be honest, I've noticed that, like, the things that drive me up the wall are the constant miscommunication, especially with texts. But even emails, it's like, I've learned one question. You put 3 things in something, nobody reads. And you have to be crystal clear on how you do it. Otherwise, like, you're going back and forth 50 times and it drives me nuts. What did you find?
Yeah, my big lesson, and I tell a whole story in the book about how I almost crashed my career learning this particular lesson. It involves Bruce Springsteen and, a bunch of mistakes along the way. But my big lesson is that I think a lot of our assumptions are wrong. And that's that I can read a book and become an expert communicator by focusing on the words that I use. And communication is something that I care a lot about. And so I was always very focused on, okay, what words? What does it look like? If I'm going to speak, I write my notes out first. And do I use this word here or that word here? And is this clear and concise? But I'm always checking against my own filter of what I think is clear to me. And the challenge that I think we have is that 2 different people can hear the exact same words and interpret them in completely different ways. And so the human brain is excellent at identifying a misunderstanding, right? I say something to you. You don't understand the thing that I said. Your head cocks to the side, your eyebrows bunch up. I don't know what happened there. Those aren't the miscommunications that cost us a lot, because unless I really don't care, I'm going to see that you didn't quite get it. And I'm going to try again with different words in a different way, right? Or you mentioned texting, you'll fire me a confused emoji, or I'll see the 3 dots flicking on my screen like for a lot longer than they should be for the message. And it's like probably pretty clear that something's going on there. And so the question is like, what is costing us a lot? And what's costing us a lot are these misinterpretations, invisible miscommunications. That's where I say something to you. Hey, can you get this to me by end of day? And you understand end of day. But my idea of end of day is 5 p.m. Eastern. And your idea of end of day is midnight Eastern or 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever it might be. And you've misinterpreted my intent. And so what we need to do is we need to find a way to make an invisible miscommunication visible. And if you're a nerd like me and you go all Tim Ferriss on work, you look for things that you can experiment on. And what I found is actually there's a technique that does this beautifully, but it's used in places where the miscommunication risk isn't like a loss to the day or week or 15 minutes or frustration. It's like someone can die, right? Soldiers, doctors, high voltage power supply, things like that. You have a miscommunication there. It's a real problem. Do you want to talk about the tactic?
Is that what the brief backs are?
That's right. Exactly
Let's
right.
talk about that.
Yeah,
That was my next question.
exactly right. And so the idea here is in the military, they call it a brief back. Okay, I'm not a soldier. What's a brief back? A brief back is effectively a repetition back in the listener's own words of what they just heard, right? This completely solves invisible miscommunications because when I share back to you what I'm taking away from our chat, you can then hear how I've interpreted it. And you can tell me, oh, hang on a second. I didn't mean end of day as in midnight. I need this end of day as in 5 p.m. because I'm going to work on it tonight. So it's ready for 9 o'clock tomorrow. But that never happens if we don't make that, the way I understood it, my interpretation explicit. And so the brief back solves this problem. Okay, the challenge is it works great in the culture of military. And if you try to bring it into the office, it's very challenging. And this is where I mentioned earlier, I'm lucky I had a great team at the time. I tried 100 different ways to ask for a brief back. And I can tell you that the vast majority of them make you sound like a jerk, right? Hey, Rocky, can you repeat back what I just told you? I want to make sure you were listening. Nobody wants to work with that guy, right? It's condescending, it's rude. You might solve the communication problem, but you're going to create a whole bunch of cultural problems. What you want to do instead is you want to keep it focused on yourself. Rocky, can you let me know what you're taking away from this conversation? I want to make sure that I did a good job getting my points across to you. It's entirely about how I'm communicating, right? And then you repeat it back, and I can be like, yep, Rocky, you got it. Like, we're on the same page. Let's go. Or hang on a second. There was some kind of fundamental miscommunication here. And when you do this, by the time I landed on this issue or this tactic, rather, I started using it. Miscommunication started going away, and I started to realize how much time I was getting back. And I looked into the research. It turns out that in the US, the average employee loses a full day of lost productivity every single week because of miscommunications that are happening in their office, right? So you don't have to get some crazy new promotion. You can literally get back a whole day by just stopping miscommunications that are happening in your office. And the brief back is the antidote to those miscommunications.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of thoughts that come around from that. One is I'm reminded of David Marquette's book, Turn the Ship Around. And he was a submarine commander, took over the worst submarine crew out there and turned it around relatively quickly. And one of the things they did was before people took action, they just said, I intend to.
That's right.
And so they would make it clear what they were about to do so that if alarm bells went off, people would go, wait a minute, what are you about to open, or what switch, or
That's
what
right.
are you doing? And then I think the second thing along that, especially it depends on the company and it depends on the leader. They're going to throw out a million ideas. And the first question is, do you want me to take action on any of these? Mm-hmm. Because I think, or even to just explain back, hey, we've got this list of things that we're working on. Here's the priority. What do you want to take off of my plate so I can do what you just put on my plate? Mm-hmm. And you'd be shocked at how often people are like, never mind. And you were going to go do something that nobody cared about.
Yep.
And that's why you never hear back.
that just tortures you. You know, it's like you go and you work on the wrong thing or a thing that wasn't needed with all of the right intentions.
Mhm.
And you're just like, I just burned a week doing this thing, and it's just going in the bin, or it wasn't really that important for us. But you made a great point. By the way, that is a great book. I'm a big fan, and I think you a point you made earlier is specifically you called out like digital communication, right? And we're all working like remotely now a lot. The brief back I mentioned works great when you're talking to another human, right? I say something at the end of my brief back. At the end of my communication, I ask for a brief back. You can use it on the flip side if you're listening. Hey, I think what you just told me is blah, 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 blah. Did I get that message right? Again, it's about me. Did I understand it correctly? That works great when you're talking. Okay, if I'm texting or I'm on Slack or you're in whatever chat message or whatever it might be, email, using a brief back like that doesn't really land super well, because effectively what you're asking someone to do is copy and paste the words that you sent to them back in, which doesn't actually tell them anything. So in a digital setting, I find the best way to deploy a brief back is to ask somebody, what are you planning to do next? Which is kind of right out of what you just described. Help me understand what your next steps are going to be based on this thing I just told you. Right? That way, they kind of do the quick, I'm going to go do X, Y, Z. And you can say, clearly we've missed each other on this, right? Clearly, I gave you 100 things that I think are interesting. And I thought we were having a brainstorm, and you're about to go and try to action these 100 things. Oh, hang on a second. I was just trying to communicate these ideas that I want you to be thinking about. You don't have to be like working on them right away. We saved a very big, massive miscommunication. So if you're in a digital setting, following up with, help me understand what you're going to go and do next with this information, so I can make sure that I've communicated well, is a great way to take the brief back into the digital world.
And I like that because we are in a digital world. And honestly, to me, Slack is the devil. Well, because I want a system and process where I can follow a chain and see what's going on. And to me, Slack seems to be everything mushmash together. And it's very difficult. I don't use Slack that much, but even text messages, trying to find something that needed to be done 17 texts ago ain't happening. And I'm just amazed. I don't even know how people get done anything anymore using all these types of. I'm an email guy, but I like having clear chain of what's going on and having it organized so that everybody is on the same page instead of all over.
Fun fact, if you have your messages open while you're working, so Slack's open, email's open, text messages are open, even if you're not replying to those messages, just having it open and your brain having to deal with the cognitive overhead of that they are there and coming in, it drops your IQ by twice the impact of smoking weed. Okay, so it would be better for you to show up to work high, which I'm not recommending. Please don't do this. But cognitively speaking, than having your email, your messaging open while you're trying to get something done. And that just shows how bad our brains are at trying to multitask. This stuff definitely can get in the way.
Finally conquered my email inbox, and that was a game changer.
Yeah. Are you an inbox zero person?
What's
like, is your
no,
inbox empty?
It's not empty, but what basically happens is when emails come in, they get auto sorted into different folders. So the only thing that gets to me are the most important emails. Everything else gets put in categories of the first level importance, second level importance. Who cares?
Right. Someday.
Never. And it's basically that, and it's really helped me. When I first implemented it, I went through email withdrawal. I was like, I thought I was missing things because it wasn't going off all the time, and
Yeah.
and it worked. So at the end of the day, though, one of the things you talk about in your book is making decisions, and depending on the organization, decisions sometimes take forever, which drives everybody
most times.
crazy. Most times, okay.
Yeah.
I built my work around only dealing with people who can make decisions.
Smart.
And who will make decisions.
Also smart.
Otherwise, we don't work together.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with this in the rest of the world?
I spend a lot of time on decision making. It's like it's an area that I both genuinely enjoy, and it's very, very challenging at a lot of companies. And this is another one where slow decision making leads to almost a full day of lost productivity for people every single week, right? So two ways that you can carve out another day by not changing your work in any way, just changing the way that you work. And so how do you speed up decisions? Right? And most times people think, oh man, like I can't change the way that we're making decisions here. The company's too big. It's too this, it's too that. What if I told you that in the 1960s, when NASA was trying to put people on the moon, they were regularly making decisions in a single business day? Okay, so the number one pushback I get is like, our team's too big. Okay, that team was 400,000 people in the 60s. The next pushback is our decisions are risky. We have to be very careful. What's more risky than launching a rocket and trying to get people alive to the moon and back, right? Incredibly, incredibly risky. Plus, they didn't have email, Slack, any of the things we were talking about to help them communicate more quickly. And so the question becomes like, well, what's really getting in the way? The thing that's getting in the way is our desire to agree with each other all the time. We try to get agreement. And agreement is not the thing that you want. You want a diverse team with diverse thinking because that gives you the best ideas. What you want is alignment, not agreement, right? We can make a decision. I don't have to agree with you. I just have to be able to support it. And the first and most critical thing that most places need but don't have is hyper clarity about who is making the decision. So before you debate any decision, decide who's going to decide. This is the single fastest way to speed up decision making that I've seen on a team, and it's something anyone can do. You're sitting in a meeting, we start talking about a decision, we're probably arguing about the different options. Raise your hand. Quick question, whose decision is this? Simple question, okay? That one question will rocket accelerate your decision making speed. You won't believe me until you try.
It's funny because it just reminded me. I was at a board meeting and one of the other board members was like, well, in the future, we should all be involved in this decision. And I looked at them and I said, no, I will make this decision exclusively. And if I think this decision is out of what we've ordinarily done, I will consult all of you to get your feedback before I make the decision. But I am not going to call everybody every time one of these decisions has to be made. I said, it ain't happening.
Well,
and thankfully, the bylaws said I could.
There's a big difference between involving people and having everybody make the decision altogether. That to me is, the standard mode of making decisions, either whether on purpose or otherwise, is consensus based. Does Rocky agree? Can we move forward now? It's like, we don't need to vote on everything. We don't need everybody to agree all the time. I can take your input and then go and make a decision. When the decision maker is not clear, it's not clear how we close a disagreement. And that's what teams need to do to decide faster. They need to disagree better.
Yeah, I'll just say consensus sucks.
It is. I always leave the door open a crack by saying there are times when that's the right thing to do. I've not found them personally. They doesn't seem to be the way we want to operate. And the Abilene paradox is a great example of this, where it basically describes how a group of people will make a collective decision that none of the individuals thinks is the best decision.
All you have to do is look at our presidential race. I don't care what side you're on.
The problem is just when we have to have consensus, we keep shifting and jigging the decision to the point where it fits everybody, which means it kind of doesn't do the thing we needed it to do. Right?
Yeah.
And we just need to get it to the point where, okay, this is a decision that the whole team is going to be involved in. Rocky's going to make the decision. We have a big debate about the thing. Rocky listens to it and he says, okay, this is the decision that we're making now. But when you haven't said, this person's deciding, or this process is what's going to take us to the decision, what you wind up doing is, I have to talk to that person, I have to talk to this person, I have to talk to this person, call that meeting, have this discussion. And until I have total buy-in, meaning everybody agrees with the decision I want to make, I can't move forward. Right? That's not what we're trying to do. We got to get people aligned to the decision. And there's a great question you can ask there if you feel like someone is disagreeing with you and you want to make the call anyway. We could talk about that if you're interested.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that one is totally about like the most common pattern is I want to make a decision A and you want to make decision B, and it's my call. I put the majority of my effort usually into convincing you that A is better than B. That's where the conversation's going. And you're pushing back. B is better than A. Okay. If at some point I've heard the argument, there isn't any new information, we're not going to agree, and that's okay. And the question is, what do I do in that situation if I'm not able to just kind of decide and get going? There's a great question there. Rocky, what needs to be true for you to support this decision, even though we can't agree? And the language is very intentional. Okay, I'm asking you to support the decision, not agree with it. And I'm using the word can't, meaning the time for us to argue about whether A or B is better is now done. We've recognized that we're not going to agree. We're going to stop trying to agree. And you're just going to tell me what you need from me to make sure that you can support it. 9 times out of 10, that's a statistic I've just totally made up off the top of my head, but the majority of times, what it usually means is Rocky needs to feel like I heard his input. Not that I'm doing what he wants me to do, but I need to be able to say, Rocky, these were the points of your argument, A, B, C, and D. I thought about them. This is how I thought about them. I'm choosing to make this decision, given the information you had and the information I considered. Most times, that's enough for Rocky to say, okay, I'm behind you. You listened to me, you're making another call, I'm on it. But when you don't ask that question of what needs to be true for you to support this, even though we can't agree, you wind up just back and forth. Is A better? Is B better? We never close it because we can't agree and we're trying to agree. You don't have to.
I have found that when people are heard and acknowledged, even though if you don't agree with them, they're okay with it.
Exactly. But you have to show them, right? You have to explain to them, I heard you in these ways. I like explicitly calling out to people. This was your argument. I heard it. You know that I heard it because I'm repeating it back to you. And I'm making this decision. And now Rocky gets to feel like he was, to your point earlier, involved in the decision, even though he's not making the decision, especially given he doesn't agree with the decision. He can still say, I see the logic. I understand why Jay is making this decision in this way. But very often leaders, people who are having to make a decision, think that buy-in means agreement, right? We don't need to get there. We just need Rocky to be able to support the decision.
And that's a big part of it. Not everyone. Yeah, I think being heard and the whole ability to communicate being heard. I mean, we've kind of touched on it in different ways, but I think more often than not, we aren't heard. People already decided what you said,
Yeah.
regardless of what you actually said.
The best way you can build trust with someone and show them that you heard them is to repeat back what they just said, right? There's no way to repeat back what someone just said to you unless you were listening to them and you heard them. That single tool will build a huge amount of trust, and it's a great communication tool.
And there's a whole nother book on trust that shows the power. The actual cost of distrust is massive within an organization. And so having that level of trust and belief is big. And again, that comes back to corporate culture and whether it's words on the wall or words in action. And every place is different. You've got to figure out what works for you and figure out how to do it.
Definitely. And I think that the key word there I just keep double clicking on is how. The impact you can have from small day-to-day changes to the way you're working. Like we've just talked about 2 of them, like one being miscommunications, like use a brief back. That changes how you work. It will improve your work situation, right? Is decision-making slow? Ask who the decision maker is. It will accelerate decision making. It will improve your work situation, right? These are small hows that you probably won't believe actually have impact because we're kind of told that you have to make some big, majestic change to have the impact that you're looking for, right? These little tiny changes can have very, very large compounding benefits when you focus on how you're working rather than things you can't change, like what you're working on and the environment. The asterisk is there are certainly toxic situations out there. And if you're in a toxic situation, changing the environment, changing what you do is probably the right thing to do. But often we assume we're in something that looks like that, uh, or that there's an environmental problem with the work going on around us, the company, whatever it might be. The argument I make in the book is try these. It's like 9 of the most common workplace challenges, simple tactics. Like if you can talk, you can try every tactic in the book, talk or type, you can try them all. If you try these things and you try to make these small tweaks to the way you're working day to day and it does nothing, that's a good indication that, hey, this might be an environmental thing. I need to actually change my job. But don't start with the assumption that, hey, I got to change the job first, because then you get a new job, you do a lot of work to get a new job and new colleagues. You have a honeymoon period for like 2 months, and then all the same problems come rushing back because you haven't changed the way that you're working day to day.
At the end of the day, it is always the reflection in the mirror and making a change to that. And that's always the key. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Intentionality and prioritization.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Intentionality and prioritization are more important than goals. And that, I had a very deep experience of, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Therefore, I need to put more focus on the present.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Other than enjoy yourself right now, I think more focus on the outcomes. That outcomes are out of your control. I think when I was younger, I wouldn't have classified it this way, but I think my thinking was very much like enough hard work, enough push, enough focus, enough dedication. You can make anything in the world you want happen for yourself. You cannot control the outcome. I think we all experience this with the pandemic is a great example. You could have had the best laid plans, right? And all these things, and they're going super great, and something just flips it all on its head. And so because you can't control the outcome, measure yourself, focus on, take joy out of the things you can control, which are the activities that you choose to do and the way in which you choose to do them.
If people would like to learn more about you in the book, where can they find you?
Book, yourgrassisgreener.com is the best place to find the book. You go there, you can find a direct link to buy it on Amazon, things like that. When you get the book, it comes with a bunch of bonuses that you can use in your kind of work life. You can pick them all up there. It goes to my webpage as well, thejasonsilver.com. That's me. There's a bunch of us. It's a common name, so I got the in there. So folks can check me out there. But yeah, yourgrassisgreener.com. Would love folks to have a read of the book and tell me what they think about it.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's listening too.
Thanks for checking out this unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can find the full episode along with all the back episodes at richersoul.com. This podcast is brought to you by Profit Comes First, where we help business owners to have a more profitable and growing business so they can live the life of their dreams. Check that out as well wherever you listen to all this content.